Welcome. You are here to rest. There is nothing you need to do right now. Nothing you need to remember. Nothing you need to plan or fix or finish. You can set all of that aside for now. This is your time to slow down. Take a breath. Let your body settle a little heavier where you are. Let your shoulders drop. Let the day move further away. You do not need to hold on to any of it right now. It will be there when you wake. But for now, it can wait. Let your eyes close, if they are not already. Let your hands rest. Let your breathing find its own pace. Not controlled, not forced, just slow and natural. You are already doing this. You are already here. Tonight, you are going to hear a story. It is a quiet story. It is the story of a man named Xabi Alonso, a footballer, a coach, someone who grew up in the cool green north of Spain and spent his life moving steadily through the world of football, not with noise or drama, but with patience and calm, and a deep, consistent care for the game. There is nothing urgent in this story. It moves at a slow pace. There are no sharp turns. It is the kind of story that asks nothing of you except that you rest. You do not need to follow every detail. You can let the words come and go. Let them settle around you the way a quiet room settles at the end of the day. Gradually, naturally, without you having to do anything at all. We are going to begin at the beginning, in the north of Spain, in a small town called Tolosa. Tolosa is a town in the Basque country. It sits in a narrow valley, surrounded on all sides by hills. The hills are green for most of the year. The air is cool and often damp. The sky is frequently grey, though not in an oppressive way. It is simply the sky of the north, lower and closer than the sky further south, and softer for it. The streets of Tolosa are old and close together. The buildings are made of dark stone. The town has a river running through it, the Oria, which moves steadily through the valley in all seasons. In the mornings, before the town fully wakes, the sound of the river is one of the first things you notice. A low, continuous sound. Steady, unremarkable, peaceful. This was the town where Xabi Alonso was born, on the 25th of November, 1981. He came into the world in autumn, when the hills around Tolosa had begun to darken, and the mornings carried a real chill. The kind of chill that makes the air feel sharp and clean when you step outside. The kind that makes the body feel awake before the mind has caught up. His family was Basque. His father was Perico Alonso, a man who had played professional football, a midfielder like his son would become, for Real Sociedad, the club from San Sebastian, the main city of the Basque country. Perico had played in the Spanish national team too. He was a respected figure in Basque football, someone who understood the game from the inside, who had given years of his life to it, and who had earned a quiet standing in that world. Football, in the Alonso household, was not a topic that needed to be introduced. It was simply present. The way the hills were present outside the window. The way the river was present in the background of every morning. Football was part of the texture of ordinary life, not overwhelming, not dominating, but woven in. Familiar, comfortable. Perico was not a father who pushed. He was a father who was there, who knew what the game required and had no need to overstate it, who let his son find his own way toward it, knowing that the way was already there, already prepared, and that the right thing was to simply make the path available and not get in the way. Xabi had a brother, Mikkel, who also grew up to play professional football, so the family had that quality. a quiet, collective devotion to the sport, shared without ceremony, lived in the daily details, rather than announced in dramatic gestures. The Basque country, as a place, has always had its own particular character. The language, euskera, is one of the oldest in Europe. It has no known relatives. It belongs entirely to itself, which perhaps says something about the people who speak it and the land they come from. There is a self-containment to the Basque country, a groundedness. The landscape does not try to be anything other than what it is. Green, hilly, damp, beautiful in a plain and honest way. The football clubs of the region have always reflected this character. Athletic Club of Bilbao, Real Sociedad, the regional clubs, they are bound to their communities in a way that goes beyond sport. They are expressions of place, of identity, of belonging. Xabi Alonso grew up inside all of this. He grew up belonging, without question, to this particular corner of the world. San Sebastian is close to Tolosa, 20 minutes by road, following the river valley as it opens out toward the sea. The city sits at the mouth of the Urumea River, where it meets the Bay of Biscay. It is a beautiful city, considered by many to be one of the most beautiful in Spain. The old part of the city, the Parte Vieja, is dense with narrow streets and old buildings, and the particular life of a place that has been lived in for a very long time. The bay is called La Concha. It curves in a wide, smooth arc, sheltered on both sides by hills. On calm days, the water in the bay is still and blue-grey. On rough days, the Atlantic makes itself known, sending large waves in from the open sea to break along the promenade. The hills above the city, Monte Igeldo to the west, Monte Urgel to the east, give the place a sense of enclosure, of being held. It is a city that feels safe in its geography. This was the city closest to Xabi's childhood, the city where his father had played, the city where he would eventually play himself. Real Sociedad had been founded in 1909. By the time Xabi was born, they were a well-established club in Spanish football, not the largest, not the wealthiest, but proud and consistent, with a strong identity rooted in the region. They played at the Estadio de Anoeta, a stadium in the southern part of the city, set against the curve of a larger sporting complex. When the lights came on at Anoeta in the evening, you could see them from parts of the city. A soft glow above the rooftops, the sign of something gathered there, a crowd, a match, an occasion. The Basque football crowd is not the noisiest in Europe, but it is loyal. It turns up. It knows the game. It watches carefully, and it appreciates what it sees. As a boy, Xabi would have been to Anoeta, would have sat in those stands, perhaps, beside his father or his family, watching a match, getting used to the way the pitch looks from the stands, that green rectangle, so clear and bright under the lights, so particular in its geometry, the way sound moves around a stadium, the way the crowd reacts before you have fully understood what happened on the pitch, learning, slowly, what it all was. He was learning everything about the game long before he had the words or the understanding to know he was learning it. He was absorbing it the way children absorb everything, through exposure, through repetition, through simply being present in an environment where it existed. When Xabi joined the youth academy at Real Sociedad, he was entering a world he already knew, in a sense. The vocabulary was familiar. The rhythms of training and preparation and competition were things he had grown up around. He was not starting from nothing. He was beginning to formalize something that had been forming for years. He was a central midfielder from early on. This is a position that asks more of a player's mind than it does of their body. A centre midfielder receives the ball in difficult spaces. They have to process what is around them quickly. They have to decide which direction, which teammate, what pace, what weight, and they have to do all of this before the player pressuring them arrives. The best central midfielders develop a kind of stillness under pressure, a moment's composure inside the chaos that allows the correct decision to become clear. It is not a physical quality. It is something closer to temperament. Some players have it naturally. Some develop it through experience. Xabi appeared to have it from quite early on, a natural capacity to be calm when the situation was not calm around him. This was not flashy. It did not produce the kind of moments that fill a youth coach's notebook with exclamation marks. What it produced was consistency, a player who was reliable, who did the same things well, again and again, at the right moment, who did not lose himself in the speed and pressure of a match. Youth football in northern Spain in the early and mid-1990s was a serious environment. The academies of the Basque clubs took their work with young players carefully. There was a culture of technical development, of passing, of positioning, of understanding the game structurally, that suited someone like Xabi well. He was not asked to be spectacular. He was asked to understand. And this was something he could do. Training sessions at the youth academy would have had the particular quality of all youth training, slightly chaotic at the edges, full of effort and noise, punctuated by the shouts of coaches and the sound of balls on grass and on the wooden boards at the side of the pitch. But within all of that, the sessions had a purpose. They were building something. One small thing at a time. Xabi was building something too. Quietly, consistently, in the way that things are built when there is no hurry and no performance, and just the steady accumulation of work. His father was at home in the evenings, or at the club in some capacity. And these two worlds, the footballing father and the footballing son, existed alongside each other without too much commentary. Perico was not the kind of man to give long speeches about what the game required. He had lived it. If Xabi wanted to understand something, the understanding was available, not forced, just available. There is something settling about that kind of household, about a life where the important things are simply present, day after day, without drama, where you grow up alongside them and absorb them gradually, the way you absorb a language or a landscape, not through study, but through living. The Basque hills in the early morning have a quality that stays with you if you have ever been there. The mist is often low, sitting in the valleys, covering the lower slopes of the hills. The tops of the hills are usually clear, catching the first light before it reaches the towns below. The air is cold and clean. There is very little sound at that hour, just the occasional bird, or a car somewhere distant on a road through the valley. If you were a young footballer walking to a training session at that hour, through quiet streets, past dark shop fronts, with the cold morning air on your face, it would be a very particular kind of beginning to the day, a beginning that had a certain seriousness to it, but a gentle seriousness, not the seriousness of urgency or pressure, but the seriousness of something that matters and that deserves your full attention. This is the kind of morning that Xabi Alonso's football life was built on. Ordinary, repeated, unhurried, the consistent, unremarkable work that eventually becomes excellence. He made his debut for Real Sociedad's first team as a teenager. The exact details of that first appearance are less important than what it represented. The moment when the years of youth football and academy training became something real. When the practice became the thing itself. It was a step that felt prepared for, not rushed, not a gamble by the club or a surprise for the player. It was the natural next step in a progression that had been building for years. The kind of step that happens when a player has done the work and is ready. And the club and the player both understand this at roughly the same time. The first team was a different environment from the youth academy. The pace was faster. The physical contest was more intense. The concentration required over 90 minutes was of a different order than anything the youth game had asked for. And the consequences were real. Results mattered. The crowd noticed. The newspaper covered it. Xabi did not appear to be overwhelmed by this. He was composed in his first senior appearances, in the way he had been composed in youth football. Not because nothing was difficult, but because his response to difficulty was not anxiety. It was attention. It was settling himself and thinking about what the situation required. This is a quality that cannot be taught directly. Coaches can create environments that encourage it, but it ultimately has to come from inside the player. And in Xabi, it came from inside. From wherever composure comes from in a person, from temperament, from upbringing, from the particular combination of both that makes someone who they are. He played in the center of the Real Sociedad midfield. He received the ball, looked up, and moved it with accuracy and with purpose. He did not hold it longer than necessary. He did not panic when it arrived under pressure. He understood where the game was going before it arrived, and this meant he was rarely caught out of position, rarely hurried, rarely wrong. Real Sociedad in the early 2000s were a competitive team in La Liga, the Spanish top division. They had good players. They played decent football. They were not a club with enormous resources or continental ambition, but they were solid, professional, and proud. Exactly the kind of environment in which a young central midfielder could develop without being overwhelmed by expectation. Xabi developed. Season by season, he became more central to the team's play. Not louder, not more prominent in the way that forwards are prominent, but more essential. The kind of player that the manager trusts, that the team relies upon, whose absence is noticed more than his presence is celebrated. This is a particular kind of importance in football, not the importance of the goal scorer or the dribbler, the importance of the player who makes everything around him work more smoothly, who maintains the shape, who keeps the tempo correct, who sees the picture clearly when others are seeing only fragments. Xabi was becoming this player. Quietly, steadily, in the city his father had played for. Under the hills he had grown up beside. The Spanish football season runs from late summer through to late spring. It is a long season, a long series of weeks with training in them, and match days at the weekends, and the slow movement through autumn and winter, and into the lighter days of spring. The rhythm of a professional footballer's week is one of the less discussed aspects of the sport. On Monday, after a match, the work is light. Recovery, movement, keeping the body active without stressing it. On Tuesday, the session begins to intensify. Wednesday, Thursday, the main work of the week, the tactical preparation, the shape sessions, the drills that rehearse what the team is going to try to do on match day. Friday, a lighter session, sharp but brief. Saturday or Sunday, the match. And then it begins again. For months, for years. The same pattern, rotating through different opponents and different cities and different weather, but always the same underlying rhythm, the same weekly cycle of preparation and effort and recovery. A footballer who is content in this rhythm, who finds satisfaction in the repetition rather than fighting against it, tends to have a long and stable career. The players who need constant novelty, who grow restless in the routine, tend to struggle with the long middle of a season when the excitement of its beginning has faded and the drama of its end is still months away. Xabi appeared to be someone who was content in the rhythm, someone for whom the routine was not a burden but a structure, a framework inside which the actual work could be done with full attention. He trained, he recovered, he played, he thought about the game, he showed up the next day and did it again. This is most of a footballer's life, and he gave it his full attention. And over time, it produced the player he was becoming. There is something about the Estadio de Anoeta in the evening that is worth imagining. The stadium sits in its part of the city, surrounded by roads and the wider sporting complex. It is not the most romantic of grounds, not old and crumbling and full of history in the way that some European stadiums are. It is practical and well maintained. But inside, under the lights, with the pitch fresh and green, and the crowd filling the seats, it has a warmth, a gathered quality, the sense of people sharing something for a few hours. Xabi played many matches under those lights, through his late teens and into his early 20s, getting to know the feel of the pitch, the way the crowd sounded when the team was playing well, the way the stadium sounded in the moments of silence that sometimes fall across a ground for no clear reason. Brief, inexplicable pauses in the collective noise, like a breath drawn all at once. He was loved by the Real Sociedad supporters, in the way that players from the region are often loved, with a particular warmth that goes beyond performance. He was from there. He was one of theirs. His father had played for the same club. This kind of connection is not something that can be bought or borrowed. It simply exists, or it does not. And in Xabi's case, it existed fully. The Basque football crowd is not extravagant in its affections. It does not overly celebrate or overpraise. But when it respects a player, that respect is deep and consistent and enduring. Xabi had earned this respect, not through grand gestures or exceptional individual performances, but through the steady accumulation of good work, through showing up and being reliable, and treating the club and the game with genuine care. By his early 20s, Xabi Alonso had become one of the more notable young midfielders in Spanish football. His qualities had not changed. They had simply become more visible to a wider audience as he played at the top level week after week, and the consistency became undeniable. There is a way in which genuine quality in football is self-announcing. You do not need to argue for it. You do not need to present statistics or construct a case. The player simply plays, and over time, the watching world forms its own understanding of what it is seeing. Xabi played. He played with composure and accuracy, and an intelligence that was visible even from the stands. People outside of San Sebastian began to notice. Scouts from other clubs, journalists covering La Liga, coaches who watched matches carefully and kept their own lists of players whose development they were tracking. At Real Sociedad, the club understood that this moment would come. It comes for most players of real quality, the moment when the larger world outside the club becomes aware of what the club has developed, and the player begins to be discussed in the context of bigger stages and greater competition. Xabi was still young, still learning, still building, But the foundations were solid and the direction was clear. He was a central midfielder of genuine quality in the Spanish top division, and he was still growing. The world of European football was paying attention. The hills above San Sebastian were the same as they had always been. The bay was the same. The old streets of the city were the same. The training ground was familiar. The club was home. But something was beginning to shift, very slowly, at the edges of this picture. A sense of something approaching, not threatening, just larger. The next phase of a life coming gradually into view. Xabi moved through his days at Real Sociedad, as he always had. He trained. He prepared. He played. He thought about the game and what it required of him. The mornings in northern Spain were cool. The light came in slowly from the east. The hills held the mist in their valleys until the sun was high enough to burn it off. The training pitches were wet with dew in the early sessions, the grass leaving marks on the boots, the cold air making every breath visible. He was comfortable here, at home here, and yet something about the way he moved through these days had a quality of readiness about it. Not impatience, just readiness. The calm readiness of someone who has done the preparation and is not afraid of what might come next. San Sebastian held him still, but gently, the way a home holds you when you are almost ready to leave, with warmth and familiarity and a quiet understanding that the time is nearly, though not quite, here. Let that image rest with you for a moment. A city on the edge of the Atlantic, the bay calm in the early evening, the hills above in the last of the light, the streets of the old city carrying the quiet sound of people finishing their day. A young footballer somewhere in all of this, walking, thinking, not hurrying, just moving through a city he knows well, through air that is familiar, toward a home that is still his. The evening is settling. The light is fading from the tops of the hills. The bay is going grey and still. Let your breathing slow a little more. Let the picture soften at its edges. You are here. You are resting. The story is here with you, quiet and unhurried, going nowhere fast. Just the cool air of the north, just the steady hills, just the evening coming in. Rest now. There is nothing you need to do. Just this. And when you are ready, the story continues. Quietly, at its own pace. In the summer of 2004, Xabi Alonso left Real Sociedad. He left San Sebastian. He left the Basque country. He moved to England, to Liverpool. He was 22 years old. This was a significant step. Not a frightening one, but a significant one. A move from the city he had grown up near, from the club his father had played for, from the hills and the cool air and the familiar streets, to a different country with a different language and a different kind of sky. Liverpool is a city in the northwest of England. It sits on the eastern bank of the River Mersey, where the river widens before meeting the sea. It is an old port city, shaped over centuries by trade and ships and the movement of people. It has a particular character, direct, warm, proud of itself, in a way that is more honest than arrogant. The people of Liverpool have a strong sense of where they are from and what that means. It is a city that does not pretend to be something it is not. The weather in Liverpool is familiar to anyone from the Basque country. Grey skies are common. Rain arrives without much warning and does not always stay long. The light on a typical autumn day is low and soft, the kind of light that makes everything look slightly muted, slightly subdued, not unpleasant, just northern. Liverpool Football Club was, by the time Xabi arrived, one of the most celebrated clubs in European football. They had won the European Cup 4 times in their history. They had a long tradition of attractive, purposeful football and a supporter base that was deeply loyal and deeply knowledgeable. Anfield, their stadium, sat in a residential neighbourhood in the north of the city. Red brick terraced houses on the streets around it. Corner shops. The ordinary texture of a working neighbourhood that had a famous football ground at its centre. Anfield itself was old and intimate in the way that English grounds of that era tended to be. The stands were close to the pitch. The noise from the crowd landed directly on the players, rather than floating up and away. The Kop, the large terrace at one end, had been a standing section for most of its history, and had only recently been converted to seating. Even as seats, the people who filled it gave the end a collective energy that was distinct and recognizable. This was where Xabi Alonso was going. The manager of Liverpool at the time was Rafael Benitez, a Spaniard, from Madrid, precise in his thinking, meticulous in his preparation. Benitez had arrived at Liverpool that same summer, also new to the club, also building something. He understood the kind of player Xabi was. He had followed his development at Real Sociedad. He knew what a composed, intelligent central midfielder could provide to a team that wanted to play with structure and control. The move made sense for both sides. Benitez wanted a player who could set the tempo from the middle of the pitch. Xabi wanted a club where he would be trusted and where his qualities would be understood. Liverpool offered both. The first weeks in a new city and a new club are always an adjustment. A new training ground, new faces, a new language in the dressing room. Xabi's English was limited at first, as it is for most players arriving from abroad. But language in a football environment is only part of the communication. There is the language of the pitch, of positioning, of movement, of where you stand and where you go, and what you do with the ball when it arrives. This language is universal, and Xabi was fluent in it. He settled into the Liverpool squad without great difficulty. The other players could see, from the first training sessions, what kind of player had arrived. The composure was visible immediately. The accuracy of his passing, the way he moved into space before the ball came, so that when it arrived, he was already facing the right direction, already in the position he needed to be. These things communicated themselves clearly, without words. Training sessions at Melwood, the Liverpool training ground at the time, in the West Derby area of the city, had the organised intensity of a professional club with high ambitions. Benitez was a thorough manager. He prepared his team carefully. The sessions were purposeful, structured, built around the specific demands of the upcoming match and the broader requirements of the style he wanted the team to play. Xabi fitted into this environment naturally. Structure suited him. Clear organisation suited him. A manager who trusted his players to do their jobs, who did not micromanage or demand constant reassurance, but who set out the plan and then allowed the players to execute it. This was exactly the kind of environment in which someone like Xabi worked best. The autumn of 2004 passed. The season developed its rhythm. Liverpool played well in stretches, unevenly in others, as all teams do across a long season. Xabi played regularly and contributed steadily. He was not yet the dominant figure he would become. He was still learning the pace of the English game. which was more physical and more direct than La Liga, learning his teammates and their preferences, learning how Benitez wanted his midfield to operate. But the learning was happening quickly, and what was emerging was a clear picture of a player who brought something that Liverpool had lacked: a stillness in the middle of the pitch, a reliable base from which the team could build. The winter came to Liverpool. Grey days and short afternoons. The floodlights at Anfield on for evening matches, while the city outside carried on under a dark sky. The smell of rain on the streets around the ground before a match. The warmth inside the stadium when the crowd gathered. A collective warmth, almost physical, that is one of the particular pleasures of attending an English football match in the cold months. Xabi moved through this season with quiet purpose. He was finding his feet, and the feet were finding their confidence. He was playing in the Champions League for the first time, in the knockout stages of European competition, against the best clubs on the continent. This was a larger stage than La Liga. Different opponents, different atmospheres, different demands. He was ready for it. Not perfectly polished, not yet the complete article, but ready in the most important sense, composed enough to play his natural game, without being disrupted by the scale of the occasion. Liverpool progressed through the Champions League that season in a way that surprised many observers. They were not expected to go far. Their domestic form was inconsistent. Their squad, though talented, did not seem to carry the depth of the very biggest clubs in Europe. But Benitez organized them carefully, and the team believed in the plan, and they kept winning when it mattered. They reached the final. The final was played in Istanbul, in Turkey, in May 2005. Their opponents were AC Milan, a club with enormous European experience, a squad of established international players, and a history of winning at this level. The match began badly for Liverpool. By half-time, they were losing by 3 goals. The situation was very difficult. In the dressing room at half-time, Benitez spoke calmly. He made adjustments. He asked his players to believe in what they were doing and to keep playing. The second half was different. Liverpool scored 3 times in a short period to level the match. Xabi scored one of those goals from the penalty spot. His first attempt was saved, but the ball came back to him and he calmly followed it in. The match went to extra time and then to penalties. Liverpool won the penalty shootout. They were champions of Europe. It was, by any measure, an extraordinary evening. One of the more remarkable results in the tournament's history. And Xabi Alonso, in only his first season at the club, at 23 years old, had his name on a Champions League winner's medal. He took his penalty in the shootout with the same composure he brought to everything, placed it firmly, scored, walked back to join his teammates. No performance, no extravagance. Just the thing done, and done well. This was the pattern of his life. The celebrations that followed the Istanbul final, the open-top bus through Liverpool, the gathering of hundreds of thousands of people in the streets of the city, were large and loud and full of the kind of collective joy that only happens in sport when something entirely unexpected becomes real. Liverpool supporters had waited for this for a long time, 21 years since their last European Cup, and it had come in this way, against this opposition, from this position. It was almost impossible to believe. Xabi experienced all of this, but he experienced it as someone who was still, in a sense, new, still learning the full weight of what the club meant to its people, still absorbing the scale of what had just happened. The city's response to the trophy gave him a deeper understanding of what Liverpool Football Club was, of what it meant to the people who lived alongside it. In subsequent seasons, That understanding deepened. He became more embedded in the city and in the club. His English improved. His relationships with teammates and staff became more established. And his football continued to develop. More confident, more influential, the composure that had always been there, now backed by experience and knowledge of this particular environment. Liverpool won the FA Cup in 2006, defeating West Ham United in a final that required a penalty shootout. Xabi scored his penalty again. This had become, in a way, entirely predictable. Not in a negative sense, but in the sense that you would always back him in that situation, because he was always calm, always clear, always capable of doing the simple thing simply when the pressure was highest. The years at Liverpool were good years. He played just over 200 games for the club across 5 seasons. He was never the most talked about player in the squad. There were other figures who attracted more attention, more headlines. But within the game, among the people who watched football carefully and understood its details, Xabi Alonso was recognized as one of the better central midfielders in Europe. Quiet in his excellence. Consistent. Difficult to replace. The Liverpool supporters came to love him in a specific way. The way a crowd learns to love a player who gives them something reliable, who every week, in every match, brings the same quality, who does not have bad spells or poor patches, who is simply always there, always functional, always a source of calm in the middle of the team. He loved the club in return. This was not performance. It was genuine. Liverpool had been the place where his career had taken its first major step, where he had won his first major trophy, where he had discovered what it meant to play at the highest level of European football. The city and the club had given him a great deal. But after 5 seasons, the time came to move again. Football careers have their own internal logic, their own sense of timing. A new chapter was opening. In the summer of 2009, Xabi Alonso moved to Real Madrid. From the northwest of England to the capital of Spain, from a proud, intimate, neighborhood football club to one of the largest sporting institutions on the planet, Real Madrid is, in scale and in expectation, a different kind of place from Liverpool. The Estadio Santiago Bernabéu holds close to 80,000 people. The club has won more European Cups than any other. Their history is long and decorated and carried with a particular weight. In Madrid, football at the Bernabéu is not merely a Saturday afternoon entertainment. It is an event, an occasion, something that the city organizes itself around. The Bernabéu sits in the center of Madrid, on the Paseo de la Castellana, a wide boulevard that runs through the north of the city. High-rises and office buildings on either side. The stadium, visible from some distance, its exterior concrete and glass catching the light of the Spanish sun. Madrid's sun is different from Liverpool's, stronger, more direct. The city is high up, over 600 meters above sea level, and the air is thin and dry and bright. The sky in Madrid is intensely blue on clear days, and the clear days are many. The training facilities at Real Madrid, the Ciudad Deportiva, the training complex on the edge of the city, were well appointed and professional. Large pitches, well maintained. All the infrastructure of a club with substantial resources and a serious commitment to preparation. Xabi arrived in Madrid as an established player. 27 years old, Champions League winner, 5 seasons of consistent performance in the Premier League. He was no longer the young man finding his feet in a new environment. He was a fully formed central midfielder, known and respected, with a clear idea of what he brought to a team and how he worked best. The manager at Real Madrid when Xabi arrived was Manuel Pellegrini, who was replaced after one season by Jose Mourinho. Mourinho was a different kind of manager from Benitez, more intense in his methods, more demanding of a specific defensive organization, more overtly tactical in his public communication. Playing for Mourinho required adapting to a particular set of demands. Xabi adapted. He was always adaptable in this internal, quiet way, not by changing who he was, but by finding how his strengths could serve the system he was operating in. Real Madrid during these years were in intense competition with Barcelona. The two clubs dominated Spanish football in a way that was remarkable, even by the standards of the game's history. Both clubs had extraordinary players. Both clubs were operating at a level that was genuinely elite. The matches between them, the Clásicos, were among the most watched sporting events in the world. Xabi played in many of these matches, in the centre of the Real Madrid midfield, against the centre of the Barcelona midfield, against players he knew well, whose qualities he understood, who understood his in return. These were demanding matches. Technically demanding, physically demanding, concentrated and high pressure from the first minute to the last. He handled them the way he handled everything, with composure, with the ability to slow his own experience of the match down enough to keep making good decisions when the pressure was at its highest. This is not a small thing in a Clásico. It is, in fact, one of the essential things. The players who maintain their quality in those matches are the ones whose teams can rely on them absolutely. During his 5 seasons at Real Madrid, Xabi contributed to the team steadily. He won the Copa del Rey, the Spanish domestic cup, and was part of a squad that competed consistently for La Liga and in the Champions League. In his final season at the club, 2013 to 2014, Real Madrid won the Champions League, defeating Atletico Madrid in the final in Lisbon. Xabi was part of that squad, his second Champions League medal, the first from Istanbul, almost a decade earlier. Now this one, from Lisbon, at the end of a long journey through the game. 2 Champions League medals with 2 different clubs, in 2 different countries, in 2 different phases of a career. There is something quietly satisfying about that symmetry. Not dramatic, just the product of a long career spent at clubs of genuine quality, played with consistent excellence over many years. Madrid had been good years, 5 seasons in the Spanish capital, in the heat and the brightness and the large-scale life of a major European club. He had played over 150 games for Real Madrid. He had been trusted by his managers. He had performed at a level consistent with everything that had come before. And now, again, the time was shifting. Another chapter was approaching. Different country this time, different climate, a different kind of football culture, in a city that was quieter and more measured than Madrid. Germany was waiting. The evenings in Madrid have a particular quality in summer. The heat of the day has softened, but not entirely gone. The wide boulevards are full of people. The bars and restaurants are open late. The city does not sleep early. It never has. There is a warmth to Madrid nights that is not just physical. Something social in it. Something alive. Xabi had lived inside this for 5 years. It had become familiar. The city, the club, the rhythm of life in the Spanish capital. And now it was ending, as all chapters end, without drama, with the ordinary feeling of something that has run its course and is ready to give way to whatever comes next. He was 32 years old, still a professional footballer, still training every day, still thinking about the game with the same attention he had always brought to it, but moving now toward the last phase of his playing career. The lights of Madrid would stay on long after he left. The Bernabeu would keep standing on its boulevard, filling and emptying on match days, carrying on the way such institutions carry on, regardless of who passes through them. Xabi would carry what Madrid had given him, the experience, the knowledge, the second medal, and take it north, to Germany, to Munich, to the next and final chapter of his life as a player. Let that image settle. Madrid at night, the city still warm and lit, the streets full of life, and somewhere in that city, quietly, the end of one thing and the beginning of another. You are resting. You do not need to hold on to any of this. Let the warmth of a Madrid evening soften around you. Let your breathing slow. The hills of the Basque country are far away tonight. Liverpool is far away. Madrid is settling into its long night. And somewhere to the north, Germany is quiet under a darker sky. Rest now. Let the story carry you gently. There is no hurry. There never was. Just the slow, steady movement of a life well lived. Just the quiet that comes after the effort. Just this. Bayern Munich is one of the great clubs of European football. They are based in Munich, the capital of Bavaria, in the south of Germany. The city is large and well ordered. Wide streets, green parks, the river Isar running cold and clear through the centre. To the south, on clear days, the Alps are visible above the horizon, white and still and very far away, but always there, anchoring the landscape. The Allianz Arena sits on the northern edge of the city. From outside, it has a distinctive appearance, its outer shell made of inflatable panels that glow red on Bayern match nights. It is a modern stadium, clean and functional, and at night it sits in the darkness like a calm, illuminated presence on the edge of the city. Xabi Alonso arrived here in the summer of 2014. He was 32 years old. He had just won the Champions League with Real Madrid. He came to Bayern as an experienced player, someone who had won at the highest level, who understood what elite football required, who carried no illusions about the game and no anxiety about his place in it. The manager at Bayern was Pep Guardiola, who had taken charge the previous summer. Guardiola was a meticulous thinker about football, someone for whom the positional and structural aspects of the game were of deep interest. He wanted his teams to control matches through the intelligent occupation of space, through patience, through keeping the ball and moving it with purpose until the right moment arrived. This suited Xabi entirely. The football Guardiola wanted to play was the football Xabi had always played naturally, a deep, composed central midfielder, sometimes called a pivot, who received the ball from the defenders, turned it forward, kept the team's shape intact, and made the simple things look effortless. This was Xabi. This had always been Xabi. At Bayern, he found perhaps the most technically sophisticated environment of his career. The training sessions were precise and demanding. The players around him were exceptional, and the results reflected all of this. Bayern were dominant in German football during these years, winning the Bundesliga in each of Xabi's 3 seasons at the club. 3 consecutive titles. The German Cup also came during this period. Bayern also reached the semi-finals of the Champions League in 2015. 3 league titles in 3 seasons. Quiet, consistent excellence. Exactly the kind of achievement that suited the way he had always worked. not in dramatic bursts, but in steady, accumulated effort over time. His body was aging, as all bodies do. The pace of a professional training schedule across decades leaves its marks. There were moments when he was rested, when younger players took his place for a match or a run of matches. This is the natural movement of time in football, and Xabi moved through it without resistance. He trained well. He contributed when he played. He was a presence in the environment, not just as a footballer, but as someone whose experience and composure gave the squad something it could not easily replace. The younger players at Bayern watched him, not in any formal sense, not in the way a student watches a teacher, but in the way that presence communicates itself, the way a calm person in a room affects the feeling of the room, the way someone who handles pressure well over years quietly teaches others what that looks like without saying a word. By the spring of 2017, Xabi was 35. His contract at Bayern was ending. He had been a professional footballer for 18 years. He had played at the highest level in 3 countries. He had won the Champions League twice, league titles in England, Spain and Germany, and cup competitions across all 3. He had represented Spain at World Cups and European Championships, part of the generation that won the World Cup in 2010 and the European Championship in both 2008 and 2012. He announced his retirement from professional football. Quietly, as you would expect, without ceremony. He had given what he had, and the time had come to stop. The last training sessions at Bayern's training complex that spring would have had that particular quality that last things have. Familiar and ordinary on the surface, but carrying something underneath. The same grass, the same routines, the same sounds of boots and balls and coaches calling instructions. And yet different, because the end was near, and both the player and the place knew it. He walked off those pitches for the last time as a professional player. The hills of Bavaria in the distance. The morning air cold and clean. The stadium somewhere behind him, waiting for the next season. The next group of players, the next chapter of its own long story. Retirement from professional sport can be a disorienting thing. The structure that has organized every week of your adult life, the training schedule, the match days, the cycles of preparation and recovery, simply stops. The mornings become open in a different way. The purpose that was always right there, always immediate, has to be found again in a new form. Xabi did not appear to be lost in this transition. He had been thinking for some time about what came next. Football had given him 18 years of education, not just in the technical aspects of the game, but in how teams function, how environments are built, how people work together under pressure. He had played under some of the most thoughtful managers in the sport. He had observed from the inside how Benitez organized a team, how Mourinho demanded specific behaviors, how Guardiola created an environment of tactical clarity and high technical standards. He had been paying attention to all of it. He had always been paying attention. He returned to Spain. He spent time at home, in the country he had left as a young man. He studied for his coaching qualifications, working through the UEFA licensing system methodically. And in 2019, Real Madrid offered him a role coaching their reserve team, Real Madrid Castilla. He accepted. Castilla was a careful place to begin. A reserve team of young, developing players. Talented, but fragile in the way that young players are fragile. Still forming, still deciding who they were going to be. Working with them required patience, clear communication, and the ability to create an environment of trust. It required, in short, exactly the qualities Xabi had always had. He spent 2 seasons there. He made mistakes, as all coaches do at the start. He learned from them. He developed his own voice as a manager, his way of communicating, his way of setting up a team, his way of building the daily environment in which players could do their best work. The football he was building was recognizable as his: structured, possession-based, patient, built on players understanding their positions and their responsibilities, and trusting the system around them. Football that was calm to watch because it was controlled. Football that made sense. In October 2022, Xabi Alonso was appointed head coach of Bayer Leverkusen in Germany. Leverkusen is a city in western Germany, near Cologne, on the banks of the Rhine. It is a modest city, shaped by industry, without the grandeur of Munich or the history of Berlin. The football club had always been competitive, but had never won the Bundesliga. They had come close, more than once, only to fall short at the final stages. This had given them a gentle, rueful nickname in German football: Neverkusen. When Xabi arrived, the club was in a difficult position, low in the table, short on confidence. His first task was simply to stabilize, to create clarity where there had been confusion, to establish a way of working that the players could believe in. This he did, steadily. The team began to improve. Results came. And heading into the following season, something was beginning to take shape. The 2023 to 2024 season was something German football had not seen before. Leverkusen went through the entire Bundesliga season, 34 matches, without a single defeat. No team had ever done this in the history of the German league. They won the title. They also won the DFB Pokal, the German Cup. Their overall unbeaten run in competitive football stretched to 51 matches before it finally ended. Champions of Germany, cup winners, unbeaten through an entire league season. For a club that had been called Neverkusen, the name no longer applied. Xabi Alonso received the recognition that came with this: Coach of the Year awards, widespread admiration across European football, the interest of larger clubs who saw in him something rare and valuable. He moved through all of it with the same quality he had always carried. He did not change in the noise of success. He remained steady. He remained focused on the work. This is perhaps the most consistent thing about him, across the whole arc of his life in football. Not the trophies, though there were many. Not the clubs, though they were among the greatest. It was the constancy. The way he remained, through all of it, the same person, composed, attentive, clear. The man shaped by the cool hills of the Basque country, by the quiet dignity of his father's example, by years of showing up and doing the work without drama. He went on to manage Bayer Leverkusen into a new chapter of the club's history. The mornings on the training ground in Leverkusen were not so different, in their essentials, from the mornings on the youth pitches in San Sebastian all those years ago. The grass is wet with dew. The air is cool. The day is beginning slowly. There is work to be done, and the work deserves full attention. He gives it that attention, as he always has. Think of a training ground at night, after everyone has gone home. The floodlights still on, casting their pale light over the empty pitch. The cones still on the grass from the afternoon session. The nets still up at both ends. A ball resting somewhere near the centre circle. Left behind. Still. The city is somewhere beyond the fence, You can hear it faintly. A car, a distant sound. Nothing more. The air is cool. The sky above the lights is dark. This is the pitch at rest. After the effort, after the thinking and the planning and the careful daily work. Just the grass and the light and the quiet. Think of the Rhine, not far from here. Wide and brown and moving steadily in the darkness. Unhurried, going where it has always gone. The trees along the bank, very still. Think of the hills above Tolosa, dark against the sky. The town below them asleep. The cool air of the valley. The river moving through it in the dark. The same river as it has always been. Everything that has been built. All the seasons, all the training sessions. All the matches and medals and mornings and quiet evenings. Rests now. Just as you are resting. You have travelled a long way in this story. From a small town in the Basque country to Liverpool, to Madrid, to Munich, to a city on the Rhine. From a boy kicking a ball on the cool grass of northern Spain, to a man who has won the game's greatest prizes and now shapes the lives of other players with the same calm he has always carried. It is a long journey, a steady one, built on ordinary days and repeated effort and the simple practice of showing up and being fully present in whatever the day required. Let that settle around you now. The story is complete. The journey has been made. And you are here. Still. Resting. Your breathing is slow. The room around you is quiet. The day is far away. The hills of the Basque country are dark and still tonight. The bay at San Sebastian is calm. Anfield is empty and quiet. The Bernabeu stands in the Madrid night. The Allianz Arena glows softly at the edge of Munich. The Rhine moves through the darkness near Leverkusen, steady and unhurried. All of it quiet now. All of it at rest. Just like you. Let your body grow heavier. Let your thoughts drift without catching on anything. Let the darkness behind your eyes be soft and comfortable. There is nothing you need to do. Nothing you need to remember. Nothing that cannot wait. Just the quiet. Just the dark. Just the slow and easy breath. Rest now. You are safe. Everything is still.